What up, Marsh Pod? Happy belated Memorial Day by the time you're listening to this. We're recording this on Memorial Day. We got a quick good news, bad news from the three games, exciting games from the SimWorld Hoops Memorial Day activities. Let's get to it. All right, three great games. I think all things considered, and first and foremost, most importantly, this you're listening to this on the 30th. It's after Memorial Day, but a sincerest appreciation for all those who have served and those who have lost their lives serving our country and allowing us to do stuff like this. It can never be said enough that the toll and the ultimate price that is paid, and coming from a family that has a number of folks that have served in the military, understand. And I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a family that doesn't have somebody who serves or has served in the military. And so, when you can, reflecting on those types of things is obviously important. And it's always good as a reminder that Memorial Day is not just a day off, but it's a recognition for those that have made the ultimate sacrifice for us, and ensuring that we don't only think of them on Memorial Day. So that's more important than anything that's happened anytime else today. That being said, let's talk some SimWorld Hoops. We had three great games. I wanted to take a peek. Let's look at them from a good news, bad news, because I think on both sides of the coin, for all six teams involved, there is some of that. So let's start with Originators Showtime, first game of our triple header. Originators, 86-84 win. They snapped that losing streak. Massive win. They needed it, and they got a great game from DJ Wagner. And we're just going to keep calling him that. That's the good news, is that Wagner was great. That's the first piece of good news. He had kind of been, he wasn't awful, but he wasn't that disruptive force that he was early on in the season, and that aggressiveness came back against Showtime, and it was a welcome sight because they absolutely needed it, winning this game by just 2. Second piece of good news is that Quinny was on. He's their measuring stick. If he's on, they tend to do well. When he's struggling, they don't. He was good, 14 points, played well. He's not going to be a high volume guy. So when he's hitting shots, it can completely flip the outcome of a game, and that's exactly what happened. And then the last thing, Ilgauskas. Vytauras Ilgauskas was impactful. There's been a lot of recent games for the Originators where he just hasn't been that defensive presence inside, whether that's because he's defending too closely a big man that's not necessarily a three-point threat, or elsewhere. He was not that way against Showtime. They are going to need him to be that type of physical deterrent if they want to win a championship. And I think in their three-game losing streak, he wasn't that. He was not disrupting the flow of the defense or the offense, because he can be an offensive threat as well. He was like that against Showtime. The bad news is Kadarius Loftus still struggling. And it's hard to see the Originators winning a championship if Kadarius Loftus does what he did against Showtime. 9 points, 4 of 12 shooting. He's been out of sync as of late. When your high-volume guy is not on, you're not going to win a lot of games. And the fact that they shot 55% from the floor as a team, despite a 33% showing from Loftus, I mean, it's because Wagner was 11 of 18. It's because Quinny was on, 6 of 9. Ilgauskas was on. Their reserves were on. Loftus, the only player to shoot under 50%. But they're not going to get through a gauntlet that will be the race to 1 if Loftus is what he's been most recently, and not that, record 40-point plus per game or in a game type of score. Showtime. Good news. They're getting more from their support staff. This is a roster that's starting to kind of come into form, right? Early on in the season, the concern with them, ever since Blaine Hamilton took over, before Blaine Hamilton took over rather, was, do they have anybody else besides Bronny James that's going to score a point? right? Can anybody else get into double figures? And occasionally get a big Bryce James night, which would be like 12 points. It's not happening anymore. They had 4 players in double figures, Bronny James included. He had 30. 14 from Jackson McLean. Nick Moss with 11. He's been good. Corey Yams has been featured more on the defensive side, 10 points. That's good. It's not just going through and relying on Bronny to go off, which of course he did, unfortunately in a loss. But when you can get Bronny to go off and you have some support staff, that's why Showtime remains a dangerous team. If the pieces come together outside of him, they're very dangerous. The bad news is their defense was atrocious. If you get 30 from Bronny James and you get double figures from 3 other guys, you have to win that game. I don't care who you're playing against. But they couldn't get stops. DJ Wagner, 29 points, 7 assists, 61% shooting, 5 of 8 from deep. Like we said, only one player, Kadarius Loftus, shot under 50% in this game. And in fact, only 2 guys, Kamari Ward, who was 3 of 6. So Eric Nelson was 0 of 3 in 6 minutes, but I'm not reading into that. So I guess 2 players shot under 50%. But Kamari Ward was 50%, 3 of 6. Kevin Sullivan was 1 of 2. Every other player shot 61% or better. You just can't have that. And so the bad news for Showtime is, how do you address this? We talked about Bay Area. We'll get to them later, about their defense kind of being their Achilles heel. Showtime isn't really proving to be all that much better, at least against the Originators, which is a top-tier team who's now 13-5. They have the second most wins behind only Lone Star. That's got to be better. That's got to be better. All right, Run DMV. They beat H-Town 70-58. We'll start with the good side because there's a lot to unpack with H-Town on the other side. So Run DMV, good news. They continue winning games. Okay, that's 5 straight. They started this win streak. They're 5-6. They're now 11-6. They are the number 4 seed in the Legacy Conference, half game behind the Frontier Division leader, Rocky Mountain. And remember, early in the season, we were like, hey, wow, Run DMV struggling. I don't know that they're going to be able to climb back up in the Atlantic Division. Beast of the East, they got to get through Beast of the East. They got to get through Gotham 5. They've not only passed Gotham 5, but they're up by 2 games, 3 games in the win column. Said it multiple times as a team I didn't want to count out, primarily because of their coach, and that's proven to be correct. The bad news is they still don't really have that one guy. Kamarian Bracken looks like he could be that, and then on a brief, their good news is almost, it seems like they're taking a page out of H-Town's book of, we're going to win without a marquee guy. Kamarian Bracken tends to be that guy, but can he be that guy consistently, right? Can we trust him to actually be the closing guy? It's why you love what H-Town does, but you also question it because they don't have a DJ Wagner. They don't have a Bronny James. They don't have a plethora of, like, superstar. Not superstars for SimWorld hoops, right? There's no Steph Curry, LeBron James in here, but Bay Area's got some superstars in terms of the landscape of the league. So you're not saying, wow, it's Royce Anderson. He might not be a bona fide number 1, but he's really good. Trey Hyman, Caden Shipp. Those guys all could be on a different team, the number 1. But Run DMV doesn't really have that. And that still concerns me. But they've got a coach that puts them in the right position. And as we'll see in a second, that matters. Having a coach that's at the wheel, it's not asleep at the wheel, or in H-Town's case, isn't even at the wheel, that matters. So let's go to H-Town. The good news is, it's tough to find it. They were close early on, which the good news is they were close at halftime of this game with a coach that's not even there. So let's go immediately to the bad news. They've got no interest from their coach in coaching this team, Ray Fox. I've been told that this could be the straw that breaks the camel's back. This could be the game that this organization looks at and says, we can't do this anymore. He's got to go. They've now lost 2 straight games. They didn't look competitive at all in the second half of this game. The one they won was that Oceana overtime comeback. Before that, a loss by 8 to Southeast Select. Their last 5 games, they're 2-3. with a win over Queen City Kings by 5. A team, if you're a division leader, you'd expect more out of. I'm told this could be it. I would not be shocked if in the coming days, if not sooner, there's a change at the top of the Houston pecking order, because that's where we're at. All right, last game, Bay Area. They beat Cascadia 75-65. Start with Bay Area. Good news, big performance from Sean Hyman. Goes to the point we just talked about. They have a lot of guys that could be at any spot. On any other team, they're probably a number 1, and at Bay Area, they could be the 3. Right, 53% as a team from the floor. That's great news. But the best news, their defense held up against a pretty good perimeter team in Cascadia. They held a really good shooter, at least who had been, and we'll get to him shortly. Tyshawn McGrady, they held him in check. Hasn't really been done through McGrady's first couple games. That's a win. That's a win for this team. The bad news is a quiet Royce Anderson night. Why is that bad? Immediately after the news that he was very frustrated with his role, we saw very aggressive Royce Anderson. This was the first game where he wasn't so. I think he took 9 shots. He was fine in those 9 shots, and granted, Sean Hyman was rolling, so I'm not trying to say that Royce Anderson's out there causing a muck because he wasn't the number 1 scorer. But I wonder, I'm not reporting, I wonder if there's eggshells whenever he doesn't go off. If it's, Royce, we had a great game as a team, you didn't go off. Is that going to be an issue? Again, I'm not saying it is. I'm not implying it is. I'm not reporting anything. I'm asking a simple question. Because we've seen that happen in other locker rooms where if the guy isn't the guy every single night, he gets frustrated, he gets bothered. That can deteriorate a locker room. I think there's an infrastructure there that should exist enough that says we can survive this, but it's still a question that comes to mind. And it's not a great question to continually have. Cascadia. Good news. Hung with a top team. They just got better. They got bested. Bay Area is a better team than Cascadia. Over the course of the game, a 10-point win, it wasn't a one quarter that blew it out of the water. It was just a continuation of holding a lead, building a lead, and keeping a lead. But there's no more victories. So this could, there's no moral victories, but this could be potentially a Cascadia troublesome team if they do hang around, if they can figure some things out. Other good news, Arthur Lattimore, incredibly impactful for them and incredibly consistent. Tough to do that from the big position. Arthur Lattimore's doing it. There's a lot of coaches out there that are talking up their big man to be the number 1 guy, the number 1 big. Arthur Lattimore's really good. Is he the number 1 big? He deserves a case for it. He's been that. Bad news. What are we getting from Montel Cage? Another quiet night. Shot 35%. He is shooting 37% on the season. He was, I believe, 3 for 7 in this game. Yeah, 3 for 7 for 6 points. Cage has not scored in double figures since April 6th. He has not scored in double figures since April 6th. He's just not been the guy that we expected from him, right? He's averaging on the season. Let me pull it up real quick. Cage is averaging 11.1 points per game, but he has not scored in double figures since April 6th. That says a lot. Other bad news, Tyshawn McGrady, as we said, came back to earth. He'd been great through his first 3 games, but he was awful against Bay Area, 5 of 18. If he's better, they might win that game. So maybe the good news, maybe we figured out it's Arthur Lattimore, it's Tyshawn McGrady, but you just can't go 5 of 18 against a great opponent. And again, credit to the Bay Area defense. This is not one-sided on either way. That there's some impact from both sides, but McGrady's got to be better. He wasn't. All it is proof that fluctuations happen. But it was a game that Cascadia, really needed to win. They are, they're 8-10 now on the season. They're 5th in the Arctic Division. I know Rick wants to talk about Pacific Rim being the hardest division. I'm not here to argue him when you have 3 teams with 10 or more wins in Asia Pacific with 8. But Cascadia is 8-10. They're 2 games under 500, and they're 5th in their division of a 16 division. they are really good. They are a really good basketball team. And they play in a really tough division. By the way, Savannah division, AT Aliens through Gulf Coast, all of them are 8-10. So, again, I know Rick loves Pacific Rim, but some pretty good divisions out there. But anyhow, just would have been a good win. Would have been a much-needed win for Cascadia. That's it. We will be back on Thursday. We might have a guest. I don't know. But we do have coming up on the horizon the Pointless Power Rankings, because I know y'all love that. So, hope everyone had a great Memorial Day. We will talk to you on Thursday.